very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to the lounge for the first of our wellness presentations. Now, over the years, there have been jumps forward in different ways of thinking about the way we deal with our health, the way we deal with the medicines that can affect us, and with our own ability to look at our lives and change what we do. A few hundred years ago, we discovered that there were various things in the world, such as plants and animals, that could help us heal. But in more recent years, we've discovered the power of our own mind and our own choices to make our overall wellness a lot better. We're here to tell us all today about how we can take a first look at this before heading deeper into this throughout the cruise. Please welcome Debbie Dixon.
Okay, hello. Oh, I should probably not stand in front of that. Welcome, everybody. How's the cruise so far? Having fun? Yeah? The Panama Canal, pretty amazing. And lots of sunshine. I don't know if you're coming from somewhere that is less sunny, like myself. Yeah, it's kind of beautiful to be. Is everybody here from the United States? Raise your hand if you're not. Oh, hello, welcome, friend. Okay. Yeah, so we came from Washington, Seattle, Washington, and so we left snow to come to sunshine. I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, so as you mentioned, today our talk is this is the beginning of the journey towards the unfoldment of our week together. So if you stick with me, I'll kind of just build on concepts of taking back your power towards healing. I think that at some point long ago, we sort of gave up the power of our own bodies. It became kind of overwhelming, the thought of our own health. So we've relied on the medical system. You know, when we have something that goes wrong with the body, we go to somebody else and we say, hey, tell me what's wrong with me. Instead of us looking at us and going, hey, you know, what do I think is wrong with my body? And we tend to know ourselves the best, I hope, right? We should be in relationship with our body to know our bodies better than a stranger. Whether or not that person has studied the liver or, you know, to the extreme that maybe we expect or hope. But I thought today I would start our journey together kind of talking about the opposite of health, but this idea of what we are moving through as a society. We are all recognizing and pretty aware of the fact that our world is changing quite rapidly. Yes? We're seeing technology, like crazy stuff emerging. I mean, that's what we were just discussing right now before. like every day you could learn something new, and it's really never ending. So our world is changing quite rapidly. In fact, over the past 20, 30 years, it's massive. If you talk to a 20-year-old and tell them about things that you grew up with, they're not going to have any understanding. That's how much technology has sort of changed and shifted in our world. We also recognize that the technologies that we're developing, the idea behind them is to increase our comfort, right? So a lot of it is to make things easier for us so that we can be more comfortable, less work, less effort, and things just get done, right? So we find that today, if we look back 20, 30 years ago, our lives are far more comfortable. Like if you have something that you don't like, you could fix it like this, because there's probably a product out there or a service or something that will come along and fix it. Yes? Pretty much agree with that? Okay. I mean, right now, if I was hungry, probably even in the middle of the ocean here on the ship, I could order, Uber Eats, and it might get dropped off through some sort of crazy, what are those things called, the flying, drone. See, he knew, yeah. So we could go with the drone. So we do know that technology is trying to meet our comfort needs. But what we're finding is, even as these comforts, the technology is coming on, we're getting less comfortable. In fact, we're seeing higher numbers of depression and anxiety and panic disorder, mental illness. People are suffering from depression at extreme levels, right? How many of you would say that you know somebody that's maybe very close to you, or even yourself, and that has dealt with possibly anxiety, depression, or panic? Yeah, absolutely. And look around, because that's a powerful thing to see. Everybody. So we live on the planet right now with over 8 billion people. I don't know the exact number, so please don't come up afterwards, but maybe 9, I don't know. But we have a lot of people on this planet. Yet, most people would say that they feel very isolated and alone. So even in a crowded room, oftentimes they feel misunderstood, not seen, not heard, like they don't exist. They feel very isolated. Nobody understands me. And we spend a lot of our time scrolling, hours scrolling through this technology, maybe ads that are designed to target our insecurities, to make us feel like, here's the problem, let me solve it with whatever it is I'm offering. And so they target our insecurities, leaving us with fear and worry that I'm not enough, I don't deserve, I'm not good enough, nobody will like me. And oftentimes this does lead down that path of the anxiety and the depression and all of the things that we just spoke about. So what we're finding is the solution that we've come up with, at least in the United States, which is why I asked that question, is pills. So now 1 in 3 people, so that means several people in this room, are medicated for one of those things I mentioned before, some sort of mental disturbance, just not feeling dis-ease within the self on some capacity. And what we're also seeing is the mental health directly impacts our physical health. So having a disturbance in our mental health, oftentimes, as we feel depressed, we have less energy. We don't want to do things, right? So we feel like contracting, getting away from people. We isolate even more when we're feeling this way. And so if you've ever seen water that sits stagnant for too long, and we are not far off from water, but because we know if we sit stagnant for too long, disease will start to emerge, right? We'll see that water gets very sick, and so do we. So we do need to keep moving. We need that kind of energy. The mental health directly impacting physical health, this has resulted in, I think they say now 1 in 3 Americans is dealing with 2 or more chronic diseases that they've been diagnosed with. So again, more pills. This is how we're solving our problems nowadays. And we can see that the problem is stemming, right there, from thoughts becoming things. But so we see the problem. We know that this is true, that we are, even as the world is getting more comfortable, technology is meeting us and like skyrocketing and giving us all the things that we need, we are not feeling better within ourselves or within our society. Our societies are getting sick. We are not connected to one another anymore. We're feeling disconnected and alone. So I'm wondering, by raising your hands, how many of you would say that the world that you live in is subjective? And let me explain what subjective means, because I know a lot of you might not know. But subjective means that, like, you create it on some level. That the world is not just made up of the tables and the chairs and facts and all of these things, but that it's something that maybe we're perceiving so that you might view the world differently than me because it's coming through your eyes. How many of you would say that there's just one world, Debbie, and that's all there is? Or, I could see that we could all be looking at the same table and maybe see it differently. That would be subjective versus objective. So subjective, awesome. Objective, there's just one table. Okay, so we're on the same boat. I like it. So that leads us down this path of thoughts becoming things. I am very much a believer that the world is subjective, that you might see a very different world than me. You know, they even say in crime scenes and things like this, right, they'll have, say, several witnesses, and every one of them will tell a different story and see something different. We are constantly being bombarded with tons and tons of information. Our minds are being overloaded, as a matter of fact, with somewhere around, they say, like 8 billion billions of bits of information coming at us every single second. And yet we can only perceive less than 5% of it. So can you imagine over your lifetime how much information, bits of information that you've taken in? But most of you could look back over, say, 1 year or 2 years or 5 years' time, and you could sum up your life in a very short and succinct story. right? Picking and choosing the highlights or the moments. And even from those moments, you're going to pick and choose certain things that other people might look back and tell a very different story about that if they were there, right? So we do recognize that as we have these billions of bits of information coming at us, there's a part of us, there's something that's happening within us that is deciding what is important to you. Not to me, but to you. And it's showing that to you. It becomes the highlighter pen. So we could experience this whole cruise together, right? And we could be doing the same things throughout the cruise, but you could walk away with a vastly different experience than I could. This is what makes the world subjective, not objective. So our perception then is huge in the way that we're going to experience the world. Yes? Yeah, because somebody could be, maybe they hated this experience, this one thing. They don't like red lamps. So they walked in here, and because they hate red lamps, immediately this experience is completely shot. They just have the worst, right? And somebody else loves red lamps. Well, now it's the greatest thing ever. I had somebody explain it to me like this, and I really loved it. It was the idea of, if I told you to go outside, of course not outside of here, but if we were somewhere at home and there were streets nearby, and I said, I want you to go outside and look for all of the red cars. And then if you walked back into the room and I said, okay, so tell me how many blue cars were there. Would you be able to tell me, do you think? No, because you were looking for the red cars. That's how powerful our mind is. It's doing the exact same thing in any given moment. It is filtering for you what it believes is important to you. And it's showing that. That doesn't mean that is what is happening. But for you, that becomes your reality and your experience, right? So where do these filters come from? The filters that we have that decide, what is it within me that is deciding this is what's important to show Debbie out of this experience? Out of the billions and billions of bits of information that are coming at me, that 5%, what do you think it is that is creating the filters? Well, when you wake up in the morning, does your brain start ticking? Like the moment you wake up, the first thing you do is start to have a thought, right? And from that point on, doesn't it pretty much consistently reel out some thoughts? They're just going all day. Again, there's some science that says there's somewhere around 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts that each person has in the space of one day. 60 to 70,000. And what they also say is, your thoughts yesterday will be very much the same, if not exactly the same, as they will be today. Essentially, we wake up, and it's like pressing a play button on your head, and the program begins, and the program runs. It's why we like habit. So we'll run through the same routine. It's like you wake up, you roll out of bed the same way, which triggers that thought. And then you start moving, and you start those thoughts again. And the thoughts just keep replaying the program. And then our thoughts now, kind of running the mind, become the filtration system. The thoughts become your beliefs, or they reveal to your beliefs. Both are true. And the beliefs that you have about your reality become your filters. I was trying to find something. I was doing this really quickly just a moment ago, trying to find something that reveals. Nowadays, we can see, like, anybody get on Instagram or Facebook or any of those things? Have you ever played with filters? Okay, well, again, technology is quite wonderful. Now, like, AI can create a background for me and place me somewhere, in Jamaica or whatnot, or on a ski slope somewhere. But what you can do is you can take a singular picture and just run a filter over it. And it makes the picture very different. Just like, again, your mind. The one thing that we can be guaranteed of is you and I could be looking out at the world, the exact same scene, and we would never be able to know what each other is seeing. There's absolutely no way that you could ever look at the world through my eyes. And there really is no way that they could make, again, we're talking about technology, right? They couldn't make technology to do that either, because even if they made technology to show what I'm seeing, you're still going to look at it through whose eyes? Yours. And through whose filters? Yours. So we really believe the world that we see is the only world. But what if it's not? What if I'm seeing something very different when I look out at the world? And so if all of that is the case, if it's possible then that you and I could be in the same place seeing an entirely different world, and again, we don't know, we have agreed upon things within this world. We have things like, we all know this is a screen, and we've somewhat decided what that looks like, feels like, but you have no idea what that is to me and how I'm experiencing it within my consciousness and within my filtration system. Yeah? It's kind of abstract, but I'm going to plant this seed, and you guys are going to be walking around for this week and thinking about this, as it's big. It's big when you can see that if what Debbie is saying is true, and we are all looking at the world through our own eyes, and we have our own filters, who do you think's in charge of changing the filter? I can't change your filter. Yeah, you are. You are. So if you're finding yourself in a place where you're experiencing disease, right? Disease in your physical body and your emotional body, and any level of yourself, something where you're uncomfortable, you're not feeling good, you're looking out the world and you're constantly seeing things that are wrong, things that you don't like. Do you think that at that same time that you're looking at things that you don't like, there are things happening that you do like? Yeah. So just like, was there blue cars? Just because you were looking for the red cars, does that mean all the blue cars didn't happen? They were there. You just didn't see them. So when our filter is stuck on what's wrong, what do you think it's going to show you, your mind? What's wrong? Yeah. How many of us get stuck on that filter? How many of you wake up, press play to the program, and that program is running through the same thoughts of what's wrong? What you should worry about, what you should fear, what is going, all of those thoughts. Do you think it impacts you? Yeah. And it shows and reveals to you your belief system. Maybe if you're having lots of thoughts of fears and worries and things going wrong and this and that, maybe within you is a belief that somewhere along the line got placed within you that is the world is unsafe. And then ask yourself, where did that belief come from? From your actual experiences? Or watching it on TV, scrolling through the internet, from other people? Where did it come from? Is it actually your truth? I mean, really, how often in your life have you truly experienced something where you have said, I'm unsafe, like something that actually, not just in your mind felt unsafe, but was. And so, but how much time do you spend worrying about and fearing that, right? So we can see the power of these perceptions and these beliefs that we don't even know where they came from. They're being planted and given to you and gifted to you. Sometimes, mom, dad gave them to us, our parents, and maybe other adults in your life when you were small, and we accept it. But have you ever looked at it, really asked yourself, is it true? Is it true? I wonder what the world looks like through Debbie's eyes. You're going to start asking yourself that. I wonder. I can tell you it's a prettier world through my eyes. Yeah. So for us to get to the nuts and bolts of these belief systems that are, by the way, creating the filters, they are deciding whether or not you're looking for blue cars or red cars. And it's really important that you know which one you're looking for. Am I in the filter where I'm seeing what's right, or am I in the filter where I'm seeing what's wrong? And do you think that that's a choice? How many of you would say, yeah, it's a choice? Right now, if I absolutely, I love you. Yes, it is. It's a choice. Yeah. In fact, even the idea and concept, now this is going to really have you questioning me. The idea and concept of wrong and right, where does that come from? Who decides it? Bad, good. Who decides it? If something is bad or good or wrong or right. But how much power do those words have over the way you feel? When you decide something is wrong, how do you feel? Awful. When something is wrong, we feel contracted, we feel resistant. When something is bad, we feel awful, we feel resistant. But if we didn't put a description on things, if things were just happening, and we didn't decide wrong or right or bad or good, we just approached them without any resistance, just sort of like, this is what's happening now. Right? Suddenly, we're free again. We get to kind of unleash ourselves from that entrapment of wrong and right, bad and good. The idea, like recently in my life, I have gone through some really insane things. It just like 2 weeks before coming on this cruise, my house, I rent a house, and I rent the upstairs of the house, and the downstairs is the owner was living there, but he was gone for like 4 or 5 months, which was amazing. But a couple weeks, probably, well, I would say for about 7 days, I started to smell something. I'm like, what is this smell? And at first I just thought, oh, it's my garbage. You know, I went and checked the garbage, and then cleaned out the sink, and then cleaned out the bathrooms. Like, it just, like, there's something here, I'm gonna find it. And it just wasn't going away. And so finally, I decided I had the key to his apartment, and I walked into the apartment, and I discovered that some water had been backing up through the sewer or something and coming in, and it was this really foul. Luckily I discovered it, but I had to vacate my home. So just all of a sudden, right, just like the floor ripped out, had to vacate my home, then, because the downstairs is going to have to be completely renovated, and they had to rip out the walls and do all the things, the owner said, well, now you're going to have to move out, you know, right? So I'm giving you notice to be out by the end of February, which would have been fine if I wasn't traveling all of February. So essentially, he gave me less than 10 days. And so there's a piece of us that could say, oh, all of this is so bad. This is so wrong, right? And then they can get resistance within us and suddenly that resistance is like, why is this happening to me? And I could sit in that sorrow of why me, or I can just go, this is what's happening today. Like, why would I deem that bad or good? I have no idea. I have no idea if that's going to turn out to be something good. In fact, maybe it's better that me moving out, I put my stuff in storage, I didn't have to pay rent for a month. There's an extra, significant amount of money in my pocket. I have no idea maybe where I'm going to be in a month, and maybe something opens up at that time that was way better than where I'm going. You never know. But if I get stuck in the story of this is bad and this is wrong, can you see how that might impact me differently, and my availability within my mind to now see the possibilities that are emerging from that? Right? Because oftentimes when something leaves our life, it's because something's on its way. It promotes change. But if we're not available to what's coming because we're in desperation or holding on to what's trying to leave, we sort of get stuck. And then if we tell the story it's wrong or it's bad, we're really stuck. So what if we just started telling the story like, this is what's happening now. Here I am. This is what I'm experiencing. And I don't know how, but this is perfect too. We don't need life to be habitual, to wake up and have it be the same every day. We want things to be shook up every now and then because that's how we promote change and growth and expansion. So sometimes, right, something has to come along and throw a little stick in your tire and cause you to kind of shift, change, grow. So I'm excited to see where this whole thing is going to lead me. I'm definitely, it was a lot. It was definitely a lot of work, but in no way did I start to tell the story of what's wrong or why me or this is awful, because that's not going to benefit me. This is a lot. We got this going on. So I swear I have not been drinking. You guys are sitting. This is a lot of movement. So who am I? Whenever I do, I lead international retreats all over the world, and I do life coaching, and I do workshops and teacher trainings, and pretty much every time I do anything, this is what I start with, that question of who am I? I ask you to ask that to yourself. It's just not often that we look at ourselves and go, who am I? Who am I? If I was to see myself on the street, what would I think about this person? What would my perception be of me? Some of the things that it's important to ask ourselves is like, first of all, what are the roles that I'm currently playing? Because when we step into a role, we tend to step into that definition of that role. For example, if you are, say, a mother, can you also be a friend? Not to the child, but can you also play the role of friend at some point? Do you think that when you're in the role of mother, you behave differently than when you do in the role of friend? Have you ever seen people that are kind of hanging out with their friends and, then the kid walks into the room and how they change all of a sudden and shift the way that they're sitting and put the way they're talking? So if we can recognize these are all the roles that I'm playing, the roles that I currently play. If I'm mom, I'm sister, I'm brother, I'm lover, I'm the role that I play in my career, my job, how I show up in the world. Then we learn a lot about those filters that we view the world through. Because oftentimes we're picking up those filters when we're in those roles. We've decided what the role, as a society, we've decided what the role of mother looks like. The role of father, brother, right? So we then, once we step into that role, we think we should behave a certain way. Our thoughts might change, the way that we talk might change. All of that, again, is fitting within what societal beliefs are. Yes? And even within societal beliefs, there's then your beliefs about motherhood. Because there could be several different mothers with several different ideas of what that looks like. Right? I mean, when I had my children, I was like, I thought it was really important that I be with them. And not from the place of I wanted to look a certain way for everybody else, but I just didn't want anybody else to be taking care of my children. I didn't want them to go to daycare. I wanted them with me 24/7, right? But then I would have friends that were happy to ship them off to daycare and work all day and do their thing. Do you think one of those is wrong or one of those is right? Who would decide that? See, now we're back to what's wrong and right. But if we know what I believe is wrong and right, now we get to decide, we get to see the filters we're looking at the world through. And if I'm looking at the world through, it's wrong to not be with your child, I'm going to be pretty frustrated when I see people shipping their kids off to daycare, right? And do you think that's going to cause resistance within me? And some level of suffering because of the resistance. So how would the world look, do you imagine, without the idea of wrong or right. There's just, this is what I enjoy. And we know enough about ourselves and what we enjoy, not being fed by the outside world, but by experiencing and going, yeah, I really like this, or I don't like this. And I don't have to walk in these lines. I get to just kind of learn about me by trial and error. And then through those experiences, I get to decide what filters I want to take on. And guess what? I also have the power to change those filters next week if I want to. In fact, nowadays we're seeing a lot of this really interesting people looking at boundaries and roles and trying to blur those lines, right? And I think a lot of that is sort of this concept of, well, why should I let you tell me what a boy behaves like or a girl behaves like or this behaves like? People are sort of going, I don't know. I want to at least be able to figure it out for myself and then live it. We're approaching that as a world, as a society, that some of that is starting to emerge. And that is coming from the technological advances I spoke of earlier. Because now we can go online where before you would live in little cities somewhere and you were kind of really, your experience of the world was going to be filtered in a real small aquarium, right? You didn't get to go out into the big sea. Unless, you were very well traveled, which was very few people. Most people, if you even go back just 20, 30 years, this was extravagant travel, right? Now it's just different. We can go onto the internet and I can see people across the world and, what they're doing. So say I decide I want to see what it's like to become a cat. I could go onto the internet and I could find a whole tribe of people into that. So we don't feel as separate, right? We can find our people, and we can go, well, maybe I want to be that now, And so this sort of thing, these blurring the lines. And I'm not saying you've got to be a cat or anything like that. What I'm saying is, I just am saying, let's look at the roles that you are currently playing and the ideas about who you are, and go, who decided that for me? And is it really what I want? If I was to meet myself, step outside, where did that come from? Where did this persona that is me emerge from? Who made her or him? Right? We've got to look at, it can be quite powerful to see ourselves, to sort of step outside and really view ourselves. One of my most, I'm trying to decide whether I should share this story with you, but I think it's pretty helpful. It's just going to change your idea of me, but since there's such a small crowd, I'll only taint you. If you read my books, you're going to hear more of it. So, I've been on this journey, a wellness journey, for 30-something years, probably longer now, which is insane, but teaching these sort of things for at least 30 years. And so I've written books and all of this around these concepts. And I didn't just stumble into it. I was pulling myself out of a very dark world and trying to find my way to the light, right? And what happened is, as I mentioned, I used to see the world through if you could see one of those filters I had up earlier, we'd imagine a very dark filter. And the world was really bad. It was me against the world. Had a lot of beliefs about people are bad, everybody's out to get you. That was the world I lived in and the way I viewed everything. If I walked into a room like this, I would make sure I knew where every exit is. I'd be standing against the wall. I'd never let you between me and an exit. That was the world I lived in. I was homeless at 15. I had a baby at 17. So I had another child, I had another human I was responsible for in this really dangerous world, bad world. Hung out with drug addicts just because that's who you hang out with when you're homeless and there's really nothing else. And so when you're in that sort of fight or flight mentality and you're sort of surviving, survival mode separates you from the world. It says that you are a threat and you are a threat, and it's me against you, right? Because I've got to get food for my child. So I did things. Things like, I might go into a store and steal formula. desperate things, but the things that you do when you have a child that you need to feed. And I would, rationalize it under the umbrella that, well, the store can afford it. It's just a store. But that's what you have to do when you're surviving. So I also had just silly things, like, things that you go get a ticket when you're driving your car. No, you pay it. Well, what if you don't have the money? And then the next time you get in your car to drive to work to get the money, you get pulled over again. And then the next time you get in the car to drive home from work, you get pulled over again. And you end up really falling into this deep hole that you can't get out of. There is no light. And that was me. So I spent time in jail. That's what happens when you get tickets and you don't pay them. So I would be seen as a criminal, even though I was just a mother going to get money, working. And so for me, I was just trying to survive. But I was a criminal, and I got put into jail. And I remember sitting in jail looking at everybody there thinking, gross. Like, I'm not like them, right? And this is what we do. We live looking out at the world through our eyes, never really looking back at ourselves. So I was looking out at the world through my eyes, and I was thinking, oh, gross, these people are not like me. And I'm sitting in the holding cell. There was several people, and one of the people that was sitting next to me, who I was trying to inch against the bars and get away from everybody, had gotten up, went over to the toilet, which was in the middle of the room, and pulled something out from inside. Started smoking it. I was so bothered and offended that now I'm having to breathe this air, and all of I'm just so, I cannot believe this. I am not like them. Then I get taken out to do, I think it's called being PR'd or something, where they take you out and they give you the opportunity to maybe release you if they believe that you'll show up for court. I went out there, and it's funny because my mother is on the cruise with me, and I think they called her, and I think she said, I don't know where she is. I was like, so they came back and suited me up to take me to jail. But what was funny is, while I was sitting there and I'm looking at all these people, I was like, how can these police officers or corrections officers not see that I'm different? And it was in that moment I did what I'm asking you to do. I was like, how could they not see? What are they seeing? And I flipped myself into their shoes. And I thought, I had grown up, my brother was an addict the whole time I was young, and I used to watch him and think, how could he not see, similar, right? How can he not see what he looks like? He's doing these drugs. He looks so scary. And suddenly I just had this moment of reflection, like, well, my brother can't see it. What if I look like my brother does to me, to everybody else? What if birds of a feather really do flock together? What if I am no different from them? And in my mind, I think I am. But what if not? I mean, I am here. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, maybe it's a duck. And there was this moment I had to go, what? I don't want to be that. How did I show up in this role? How am I the criminal and they are on the other side? How do I get back my power? How do I make sure this never happens again? But I had to have that realization. I had to have that moment of reflection before I was able to do that. And that is exactly what happened. From that point on, I actually, when I got out of jail, I called up every single courthouse and found out how much money I owed. This was insane. It was like somewhere around $13,000. Stuff accumulates, and I'm like, oh, this is really smart of our justice system. Let's take a single mom who will never be able to get you any of this money and just keeps piling it on, making it more impossible for her. But it was $13,000. At the time, I was in, survival, as I mentioned, and so I had, I was very much a brilliant target for the sex industry, adult industry. I was, again, single mother, homeless, just check, sexual abuse as a child, check, like all the things. So that's where I ended up in the that industry, the adult industry, for many years. But I went and spent about 30 days, drove to California. I had $80 in my pocket, drove there, even with tickets. That was some praying. Holy shit, I was praying. I was like, please, God, don't let me get pulled over. Oh, my God, it was like right when I got there, too. I like looked over. I'm just crossing the border, like going into California. I look over, and there's a police officer right here on a motorcycle. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. My luck. And he goes like this. He goes, slow down. And kept going. I'm like, I love California. Who are these people? It's my home. And I pulled in there, and I just started working. And I worked for, like I said, around 30 days until I made approximately, a couple $1,000s more than I needed. And came back, and I did the thing that most people wouldn't do in that circumstance. That's how badly, and again, because of this realization I'm speaking about, I think that that's what tips the scale. Suddenly you become somebody different when you decide. And that somebody different will make different choices. So I didn't make the fear-based choice that most people would in those circumstances of going, I've got $15,000. That's a fortune. That's $1 billion. I could get a TV, and I could take care of us and pay our rent for some months and this and that. I said no. I called up every courthouse. How much do I owe you? And delivered the money, one after the other, until I had $0 left. But I liberated myself. And that has really been the pivotal point in my life that has allowed me to continue on this journey. And sort of, again, that was me crawling up out of the dark and just emerging. And what I can tell you is, because of that move and because of everything I've done since then, what I see is an incredibly different world. So when I'm telling you that you can change the filter, it's coming from my absolute experience. I used to see, when I worked in that industry, I traveled to many different cities and would work in these different cities. Cities that you might go on vacation at, right? Like Hawaii. Well, you see the underside of that city, and it's not so cute anymore. But that's the way I was introduced to pretty much every city, was this dark, right, filter. And now it's like I'm on the other side of it. And here I get to go to Hawaii, and I'm just seeing nothing but this brilliance and this beautiful light and this whole other world. So I know what can happen when we change our filters. I know a whole new world can emerge right where you sit, that you don't have to go somewhere. It can happen right here. You don't have to get the new job. You don't have to have the new relationship. You don't have to do anything else but change the filter. And that filter you will find by asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? What are my beliefs? What are the roles that I'm playing? How do I show up in those roles? Anybody watch Netflix? Yeah, seen Netflix or any of those things, and they have those series. I want you to pretend that you are the lead character in a Netflix series, and you've got somebody that you're trying to prep to play your role. What would you tell them? What are the qualities you would say that you are? How would you prep them to play you? That's asking, who am I? That's really looking at yourself from an outside perspective. And who would be the lead characters? And why are these lead characters also in your show? Because what do they bring out of you? How do they let you feel when you're around them? Maybe you emerge differently. Right? Yeah? I gave you a lot just now. So is everybody going to look at me differently? Red car, blue car? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about all the things I've said so far? Thoughts? Any thoughts? Have you ever asked yourself these questions? Who am I? Have you ever looked at your beliefs and said, are they true? Have you ever thought, how might my beliefs create a boundary that I'm viewing the world through that limits my ability to see what might be there? For example, if you had the belief that, okay, here's a really good example. This is what I'll say. I had a girlfriend, because again, I've already shared with you the darkness I came from. she was also in that industry. She would go out. She had a boyfriend that used to beat her up all the time. So I'd see her. She got black eyes and her face is all messed up. And this was her choice. She was with him. So that was her jam. She loved him, and they would break up from time to time. And so we would go out to the club somewhere, right? There'd be hundreds of people at the club, hundreds, right? Be a popping club. Guess who she would find at the club to go home with? Anybody? Do you think that every person in that club was like to beat women? Probably not. Maybe. But guess what she would find? That person. That is what happens when our filter is that. If we believe this is the way a relationship looks, if my belief is, when I play this role, this is what it looks like. If I am the abusee, I must find an abuser. We need the person to be there so that I can play the role I'm used to playing. So she would find that. Another way I explain it is, and I just love this one so much, imagining that you are imagine you walked into a room with, say, 1,000 people. Okay, so everybody's sitting just like in these chairs, only there's actually people here. I'll fill. I got 1,000 people. And your belief is all people are bad, okay? But what you don't know is 999 of the people in this particular room I'm talking about were saints, had never done anything bad, just pure hearts. But there's only one person that would do some, bad stuff from time to time. And again, good and bad, all relative, but might do the things that you believe about people to be. Guess who you're going to sit next to? You're going to sit right next to that person. And then guess what your belief is going to be about every person in that room? They're all bad. Because that's how powerful we are. We're going to magnetize to us the experience because that's what our filter is going to show us. It's not going to show us the 999 saints. It's not going to have you sitting next to these wonderful people. It's going to find that one person in the room that's going to verify and validate your story that all people are bad. And you're just going to keep living that. So a simple tweaking of that story, a simple looking at that story and going, is it really true? And what if I told a different story? And what if I started to look for evidence of a different story, that all people are good? I wonder if then I would be able to see the other 999 people. But first I have to be available to it. I have to be looking for the blue car to see it, right? Yeah. Does anybody know what time it is? I didn't bring my phone up. 4:23, perfect timing. Hey. All right, so if we have any other questions or any thoughts or anything you guys want to share, I'd love to hear it. No? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little late, but
yeah.
You hit on a great point about the filters. Sometimes it's who am I, but it's who we think they are.
Absolutely.
The same. So.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep. Which is what, so she's saying that, can you all hear her? Basically what I was talking about at the beginning is like, so our perception is going to be, of everybody in this room is going to be based on what my beliefs are. So I'm going to be looking at the filter. So you could have 100 wonderful qualities about you. But if I'm only looking for these 2 that are negative, guess what I'm going to hear? I call him my husband, but my ex-husband used to, he used to drink. He had a little issue, and so anytime that we were maybe going to go out with a group of friends, I would get in my head. I would know exactly, because I've been down this road a million times. I would have the story in my mind, the expectation of what he's going to do. It's going to be the same as before. And so I would start to anticipate that, and I would build up to it, and then we would go out, and guess what would happen? And so I wonder if I had given him room to change, if I had expected something different from him, if I would have noticed that. So sometimes we're holding people in an old belief system of who they used to be. We'll tell this story. My mom, she's telling the story all the time to all my friends, like, oh, Debbie, she's always late, which is crazy because I'm the most punctual person. Anybody who knows me would say Debbie's like 15 minutes early to everything. But my parents are like going back to when I was 10, you know, and they can't let it go. And we have these things that where we hold people back in our lives. We don't let them grow. And how many of you are different this year than last year? Yeah, holy shit, yeah. How many of you different than 5 years ago? I mean, you're like a whole nother human. Do you know our bodies are actually recreated in 90 days on a cellular level, entirely head to toe? You are literally a different person today. And yet, we will have people that we'll run into, and and by the way, they'll have a story about who you are. And they'll want to tell you who you are. And you'll want to tell them, no, I've changed. And then they're going to tell you you're lying. You're lying about who you are because I know who you are. How often do we not even allow people to change, to grow, to expand, to create new beliefs? I always tell people, if you're going through a major shift and you want to play a new role and become somebody different, it's important that you sit down with your family and those closest to you and introduce them to the new you and ask them if they're willing to meet you in this way. And if not, then we're going to need some space for a while I get really solid in my new belief system about who I am. Yeah. Good question, yeah. And okay, I think yes. Yeah, yeah. But if we look at that, does everybody here, if I was to ask you what's right and wrong, do you think we'd have some disagreements and some strong division? Okay, and then we have that middle road of what we know is truth, that we all want the same thing on the mass scale. We're all looking to be loved. We all want to be healthy. We all want to be accepted. So we have these similar things that we could glom onto. And yet a lot of us are saying, no, they're wrong, I'm right, this is bad, this is good. And what I'm saying is, yeah, we shouldn't harm others, right? But if we're living in a place where we feel really good about who we are, we're feeling really, really good, guess what we don't want to do? Harm others. We only want to harm others when we're suffering. And a lot of suffering, all suffering, I would say, and this is in yogic philosophy, all suffering stems from resistance. It is suffering built of wrong, right, good, bad, me resisting what is. If something is happening that I've deemed bad, I'm going to now suffer because this is happening. But if I just say, whatever, that's happening, and that doesn't mean that please don't jump in and help somebody that needs help and things like that, but again, that's not something that we need to deem good or bad. It just is happening, and this is how we act in that moment, you know? Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what will also happen, and so I love that. It actually is easier than you think, because when we start to embrace this idea, I'm becoming somebody new, and I just let go. And I'm not clinging tightly into needing them to see me anymore. I don't need to. I can let them go. They'll start to go away because they're no longer going to meet you where you are. If you're no longer the abusee, the abuser is not going to enjoy you anymore. Do you see? As you start to change, you're going to draw in different people to reflect back to you who you're becoming. And so there'll be a whole new, and those people over here, so I started to become this person, I was always really positive, but I had this knack for like just finding the silver lining in literally everything. You could tell me, your house is on fire, and I'd find something positive instantly. Like it was just like everything. And so a lot of people want to call you up and just complain. And that was my friends before, the people I needed as I was growing to let go of. They would want to call and complain, and I would just be giving them positive things. And so again, they weren't getting what they needed anymore, so they would want to sort of, let me go. They just stopped calling me. They would call somebody that would feed their complaining. Yeah. I appreciate all of this and really love the talking and question asking. So we'll do this again tomorrow, and hopefully you guys will be here. I'm like being called off the stage. Here's Tim.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful chance to get to know Debbie a little more, but unfortunately she has a meditation session starting right now in the screening room if you'd like to join us there for that. Thank you very much for coming today, and it's not the last we'll be hearing from the wonderful Debbie Dixon.